Hi, everyone. Today we have a new episode of Office Hours, and with me is Tereza from E2B, and we're going to talk about infrastructure to run agents, to run, I guess, code generated by agents securely, right?
Yeah, running AI-generated code securely.
Yep. Okay. So, Tereza, do you want to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about E2B?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for invitation. I think we have met first time at AI event in San Francisco, and I really appreciate that because I was watching other workshops from Near AI. So thanks for the possibility. Yeah, I'm DevRel at E2B. E2B is a startup. We are operating from San Francisco. I also just opened a Czech office, and we are building infrastructure for AI agents. So I'm always saying we are not AI company. We are more like low-level infrastructure, boring company. And today I want to chat about where AI agents still fail, why is that, and how a good infrastructure or like good processes in the background might help that. Because I think it's still a relevant topic, even through there has been like crazy launches like Manus AI and OpenAI SDK. There is still like the waves where agents are like have more hope than fail enough again, and it's never like still reliable enough, like 100%. So I want to go into what are the challenges and how execution runtime might help. Yeah, so E2B, it's the cloud environment that you can run AI generated code in. I think best demonstrated it's on example. For example, Perplexity is using E2B. Let's say you give it a prompt to analyze data, to do something more complex. Perplexity has underlying LLMs that generate the code for that, because anytime you need to do something more cool, basically the agent of course needs to write code. It's like giving agent a brain, let's say, or hands, or just like something useful. And this code needs to be executed somewhere, right? And of course you could use like some simple like REPL or something like very simple environment and just run it, but you usually need much more. For example, Perplexity has millions of users, each needs separate instances. So we are building environment where you just run this code, and it has actually more features just built right for the LLM use cases like that. Other use cases are generating apps, right? Like V0 or yeah. So it's also like the same principle. You generate code, you execute it in E2B sandbox, and you have something like real output, like whole apps. Other use cases are like running tests and also computer use. So this is just the environment we built, E2B sandboxes. This is the overview of the use cases and how they look. And yeah, I want to take a step back, like why we started building E2B. It was in 2023, actually, when agents first started. It was, I think, AutoGPT launched, right? And everyone had this like wow moment that like agents are going to be everywhere and do everything and book whole trips and do all like your tasks and replace everyone. So that's when we started building E2B, and we knew that agents are going to need a lot of different tech stack, right? Because it changes the way that software is built. It changes a lot of things because now suddenly everything will be built for LLMs, right? People now are putting their like documentation into Markdown and creating all things like easy for LLMs to read, because agents already are browsing internet, and they need also better security, of course, because by definition, what LLMs generates is stochastic. The code is untrusted. You don't know what is going to happen, what data it needs to access. So now you need to suddenly think about a lot of different challenges. This is like the diagram from Andrej Karpathy. I think everyone has seen that, and they made a parallel to like LLM being a new kernel, and basically everything built around that. Uh, yeah, and that's also why we decided to build something that's environment or playground that's very special for the LLM use case. So yeah, if you want to do any questions or jump in, just saying feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so I guess the first time I was thinking about these environments was when I was playing with Devon back in the day, right? And with Devon, obviously for Devon, that is the primary use case, right? Because it is a product that generates code, and it does execute code somewhere, presumably on some sort of version of E2B, well, like something similar to E2B, right? But when they want to expose the code to the user, like they want to host it so that the user can interact, they host it on Netlify. And I was thinking how effectively one of the problems that exist in products like that is that a lot of people, like I guess in case of Perplexity, right, the code is generated, it's executed, it's used, it shuts down, right? But with the human in the loop, especially the way you say it on the slide, it could be that the code is generated, it's hosted, but then it needs to stay there for a while. Right, so I wonder if you guys address that particular use case where where the container needs to exist for a while, whether it's cheap to keep it live, or is the use case more like the code is written, code is executed, container is immediately shut down?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, because yeah, you are right. That's exactly one of the very specific things for agents and why they fail. Like sometimes the process needs to run right, and sometimes it runs into error because it shuts down. And our sandboxes are actually persistent, so you can pause the sandbox and you can resume it later from the state where it was when you paused it. And you can get back to the sandbox file system and memory all the processes. And in the environment you can also reference like the previous code, so that's possible with the sandbox, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah. So effectively, so they can be so the snapshotting is supported, right? So you can snapshot it, put it into the cheap storage, wait until the user is ready to select upon it again. Yeah, that's pretty cool. What I guess how so from perspective of a developer, right? Let's say I'm using E2B. So my interface is effectively similar to something like AWS, right? I'm saying, hey, I want a container. It gives me like what SSH access, or how do I interact with the container?
So you interact with the sandboxes we built through our SDK. You can use it in Python or JavaScript, and you start the sandbox with the SDK, and you control basically everything. You can also self-host it. Now it's supported on GCP and working on support for AWS. But yeah, the SDK basically controls it all. You can customize the sandbox before, and everything.
Yeah, pretty cool. And
should I go to the next slide?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. We wanted to name this Where Agents Fail Today, because I think you see a lot on Twitter, like discussions. Every time there is a new launch of agents, someone always says it fails for them, or it's slow, or it's going to be expensive. So I think the consensus is, of course, agents are cool, but yeah, it's still a long way to go, right? Even if it's like really exciting. I think what doesn't work yet that well in production is the Devin-like types of software engineers. And I think you might also disagree, of course. Like I haven't tested all, but like
no, I fully agree.
yeah, like very autonomous agents, right? That needs to do like all sequence of tasks one after another. That's like big challenge because there is like more probability to fail. Of course, as you said, like it needs to run for a long time, keep the context. So yeah, I think there is like a trade-off between how reliable the agent is versus how much freedom and autonomy it has, and of course like the restrictions. There is another trade-off, like how much you want the agent to do, how much like access to the system you give it versus how secure it actually is. And I think I see this for big companies especially. They are worried how, like, if they can let the like agent, for example, use computer or even browser. So I think there is still a lot to solve. And the common challenges we see or hear about from developers. So of course hallucinations, even through I feel like the LMs are improving a lot. I mean, like the same prompts are working better now. So of course this is like a lot of this is going to be fixed by just better models, I think. But of course, I feel like agent is the same as like having an intern or like your assistant. It needs to like understand the context really well. It needs to see the nuances. I think this is especially how it differs from humans, right? Because it needs to really catch the vibe, what you want, what exactly you want. It has to like read between the lines. So this is still quite difficult, like how to iterate with the humans. I think multi-agent systems are going to solve this partially. I've seen use cases where like they can, of course, give feedback to each other in production, but still it's a challenge. And I think another thing is evals that is still like needs to improve. And then of course, like the persistence, the agents to be fast, to be scaled for millions of users, and yeah, to be secure. So that's if you want to add something from your experience, like from using agents, I think it's always interesting to hear. But
Yeah.
it's
No, I think with the autonomous development, I think for narrow use cases, it's probably I haven't played with them for in a couple of months now, but I think last time I tried for narrow use cases, they were relatively well. But if you try to use a broad one and ask something that is not quite common, like write a lean, even a simple lean proof or something in a language that is not as common, they hallucinate quite badly still.
yeah, I think it's funny when people try to test like new launches, new agents. They always try to find that one use case that doesn't work, and I feel like when you try to test it, you sometimes can't think of something good, but actually then you use it in production, and you have like most of the work is very niche, right? To what people need. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think
That
it's
might not even be the case, right? Like I presume that 90% of what people do is JavaScript and Python, and that probably just works pretty well at this
Mhm.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess. But we have use cases like running tests in different languages. And for example, we have one user that they are building product for scientists, and scientists write code in R a lot, right? R is very
Mhm.
like specific for like I don't know life science and stuff. And they need to so they run this code from R in E2B, and it's very niche use case because also different types of users, right? Because I feel like who is mostly experimenting with agents now are software engineers or like tech people, but even scientists or like PhD people, it's not like the same as engineers. They don't code that well, probably, maybe not the experience. So it's already like different users. So I think that's also challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Though I guess there would be quite a bit of R in the internet, right? Because
Mm.
even like I guess before machine learning before like Python and NumPy became so dominant, R was pretty standard for a lot
Yeah,
of
that's true. I don't know like how was the like development. I feel like now, yeah, Python is popular.
yeah.
TypeScript, of course. Yeah. Okay. Uh, yeah. Then how to make agents more reliable? Of course, one way is to make LLMs better, but there are also ways you can improve agents. And one thing is making them actually like do the things instead of just talking, right? I think at the beginning, most agents were just producing texts. It was just like chatbots, and then they started using more tools like code interpreter, of course, and producing actual results. Like now, for example, with deep research, they can generate the whole like report with charts. And this is also good when they produce something actionable when they run the code to give you something because then they can iterate on what they produced. So this also adds the reliability and feedback loop. Security, yeah, that's what I talked about with E2B. So when you have app for end users and if you want to have more than a few users, you need to scale it somehow and you need to like isolate the instances because you don't want the code produced for every user interact with each other, obviously. But like it's not that easy to make that many instances at scale and still it to be fast and isolated. And then I would say a lot of it is about UI, UX, because a lot of people had similar idea at the beginning, building like the same types of agents, like data analysis, right? But for example, with data analysis, you can see like how Julius AI made like great product and distinguished from the others, even if it's like B2C, so it's challenging, right? But you can see that the UI makes a big difference, especially I think because it's AI, so it's good to have like transparency and good monitoring what's happening, how the user should interact. Yeah, and these are some of the problems that E2B solves with the cloud runtime. So we can run code in like secure, isolated manner in the cloud, in the sandbox. So again, when the code is generated, the sandbox is started, and there all the processes are running. You can install packages in the sandbox. You can access internet, so you can use the sandbox even for like computer use agents. You can download files from that, everything like this. And yeah, and it's good that you can just give it to the agent. And that's why I said we are not AI company, because it's like separate from how the agent is built, because we don't care what LLM it used, right? We don't care if it's built with LangGraph or Crew AI or what tech stack it uses. We are just like the environment, the infra layer. Because I feel like that's one thing that developers care a lot from what we hear is not being locked in for specific solution that's like opinionated, right? They always ask, they want like low level, something that fits their tech stack. They don't want to like change anything. So that's good that you can like connect it and be very agnostic. I think in general that's good for like LLM software, because like people already are building like with multiple LLMs. They combine it all. They just don't choose their favorite, right? It's like difficult to be just like big winners. So I think it's even more important to be just like agnostic. Okay. Yeah, execution runtime. That's what I said basically. So here are some of the like properties, like features that you need to have for LLMs. So you need to start the sandbox quickly, and our sandbox is built with Firecrackers by AWS. It's type of micro VM. You have like multiple micro VMs, but that's just Firecracker is very fast and it's battle tested, so we can start it in like I think under 200 milliseconds. You can connect it to any LLMs. You have file system there. You can have custom packages, and you can have persistence and all these features that are like important. And you can also self-host. So that's how I would summarize probably why the environment is good. And then we have like the second part. What even are the types of like runtimes? What you can even do if you just want to start, let's say, from scratch and run your code just simply. And then I think we see why micro VMs like Firecracker that we are using is that good. Uh, so you can have like very simple security, like just process level. But of course, that's you probably wouldn't use it in production for this because it's just like limited security. Then you have containers like Docker, and people usually ask a lot, what's the difference between running code in Docker and in E2B? That's like one of the most common questions. That's I get this at always at like almost every event, and I think there were agentic apps that were using Docker for running code. For example, Autogen, at least at the beginning, not sure if now, but they were using Docker to execute code as code interpreter. And so I want to address this. Like Docker is fine. It also can be good as a runtime, but it has like limited security because the kernel user land interface is very large compared to VMs, where the interface is much smaller. And so it has better security. And some solutions combine both, but of course when you run it locally also it's difficult to scale then, so that's like limitation for Docker. But of course it doesn't mean that it's not possible or something.
Presumably Docker takes more than 200 milliseconds to spin up. Presumably I'm saying Docker is taking more than 200 milliseconds to spin up.
Yeah, that I am not sure, to be honest. I can check after this, but yeah, it's probably. I mean, Firecracker is known to be very fast, so I guess, yeah, I get it's not even that fast, especially at scale.
We use Docker today. I mean, we run. We have chat.near.ai where you can you can execute code, and we're running it in Docker, and we spent quite a bit of time to effectively read up on security of Docker containers, how to harness them, and I think that potentially Firecracker is the better
And what do
alternative.
you use it for?
I guess Firecracker is potentially a better alternative than Docker. On your slide it says trade-offs security. So does it say is the claim that Firecracker has better isolation than Docker or worse isolation?
Yeah, I think it has better isolation. I think like I need to find a slide. Yeah, but you can see here basically like the comparison of the container versus virtual machine. I think the point is how much you expose like of the kernel and how you isolate your processes, what is happening from the kernel, right? Because you have containers like Docker, and then you have virtualization like micro VM, and there you have like extra. You are basically protected from the host kernel, right? I think it's like separated. You can find the slide. Uh, okay, I think it's not here.
But another question
Yeah,
is,
here it's on the left. Like, yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry.
So with Docker, right, I can, as a user, I can spin up very customized environments, right? It could be any operating system with any version of, libraries and whatnot. So with E2B, am I the user configure the environment, or is it something that is standardized across all the, ports?
Like OS environment.
Yeah, but operating system libraries, pre-installed software.
Yeah, so I think it's two different things. Like operating system, E2B is using Linux currently, and that's the only one. I think developers haven't asked that much for others, but we might add other than Linux. But now you can run a Debian distribution, so that Linux inside the micro VMs. That's one thing. With the custom packages, as you said, yeah, so we have custom sandboxes, and you can pre-install packages there. So you can customize the sandbox, and I think a lot of users not sure what percentage, but a lot of people are doing that. Like you can customize, you can create basically a sandbox template. You generate it, and there you can like pre-install what you need, what special packages to install. If that's what you
Then
asked.
even for a custom sandbox, it's still 200 milliseconds, right? So I configure it once in advance, and then I can spin up new ones. Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
I think it should be possible, yeah. And you can also customize like CPU and RAM of the sandbox template, and use E2B CLI to do that. Yeah.
But also, when I was asking about operating system, I didn't mean like Linux versus Windows. I meant more like, like a, I presume that that like your actual hardware is running on Debian or something. But let's say I want Arch Linux or Gentoo. Is it something I can do, or does it have to be the same operating system as the host?
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said as example.
So like, can it be a flavor of Linux which is different from Linux running on the host? Like, can I run Arch Linux in my sandbox?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Only Linux is possible now. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but yeah, I think you only need you only run Linux right now, Linux OS. But yeah, we are definitely like discussing that like with users, and if there's like need for other, I think there hasn't been that much for this like specific use case with agents, but we might add other probably. But that's a good question. I will find out more.
Yeah. Because so the problem there is that there are, like, I think it's relatively common these days to use Ubuntu, right? But for example, on AWS, their standard operating system is their flavor of Linux, which is called Amazon Linux, I guess. and it uses a different package manager. It uses, some of the system utilities are different, right? So if someone has dependencies of those, right, and then if a sandbox can only be Ubuntu with apt, that's not something they can use, right? So I guess with Docker, I'm pretty sure you can run any Linux, no matter what host OS is there.
I think you should be still able to have any dependencies you need, but that's a very good question. So yeah, need to find out. But
Mhm.
mean your use case would be someone using already other ecosystem, right, and needing some dependent.
Like using Arch Linux. Arch Linux is sufficiently different from Debian.
Mhm. Yeah, not sure. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe you can specify it in the sandbox
Mhm.
template, but need to check. I think I can share after the presentation.
Great.
Okay. I think, yeah, let's also summarize. So we have also VMs and micro VMs, and Firecracker is micro VM, and it's specifically fast. Then we have other types of micro VM. We have cross VM, cloud hypervisor, which is more general purpose and has GPU support. So there's other options than Firecracker, but again, we picked Firecracker because it's very fast, it's battle tested, and it's built with AWS Lambda. But you can also use other options. So yeah, we're also exploring that to build. But I think Firecracker so far has been
So
good.
Lambda is built on Firecracker. I see.
Mhm. Yeah.
It is very battle tested.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the question is that's actually a good question, right? So why, let's say I'm Perplexity, I need to be running the code. Why would I use E2B as opposed to Lambda?
Mm, yeah, I think because Lambda is usually how people start, or when we have new customer, they usually start building something in house. They usually, actually, very often they build with Lambda functions. That's the probably most common way if they want to build in house. And of course, they can do it. They can do it themselves, but the problem is it turns out it gets very very complex problem with a lot of infrastructure to be built, and you start to have a lot of features that you need to add on top of that, because as far as I know, Lambda also is not specifically made for agents. So you will need some level of maintenance, customization, and all these challenges that I mentioned, and you will need to build it yourself. So what the people most common tell us is they started to build this because they didn't know something actually exists, and it didn't exist also some time ago. It wasn't that big market. So yeah, you can start it yourself, but then probably how annoying it is to build, and yeah, that's probably the challenge, because I hear usually the companies don't have infra team for that, or don't want to just focus on making the infrastructure great. And I see it that we are constantly working on something, fixing bugs, right? And I'm not infra engineer, but it's probably very difficult to do in-house. So
Yeah.
that's what I understand.
You mentioned, so I guess one of the concerns with running something in the cloud is always data privacy, right? You mentioned E2B can be run locally, right? So is it open source, or how does it work?
Yeah, we can self-host, and we run in the cloud usually, not locally.
Mhm.
So not sure what you ask about data.
So self-host would imply that it's running locally on my end, right? Or what is self-hosting?
Yeah, that's self-hosting, right? But yeah, I'm just saying not only we don't do only self-hosting, but a lot of people still run it in the cloud. So yeah.
Of course. But for self-hosting, so is it to be open source, or how do I self-host?
Oh yeah, I think I didn't say, but we are completely open source, including the infrastructure. So you can go to our GitHub E2B dev, and for self-hosting we have a complete guide there. If you go on our GitHub and find infra repo, you find guide for self-hosting E2B on Google Cloud. So you will need probably Terraform and yeah, Google Cloud CLI and other things, and you can do it just there. But yeah, all the code is accessible.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the this session. So, is there anything particular, any like last comment? What you're excited about in the future? What's the most exciting in the near
Yeah, I'm thinking.
E2B?
Yeah, I wanted to share because I think yesterday was the OpenAI launched, and they launched some kind of computer use agent. And we often build stuff. We build like open source, let's say, side projects to show how E2B works. So we just launched a computer use agent with a nice UI that's using the latest OpenAI model, and you can try it for free. It's also on our GitHub. So we have like a bunch of apps like that. We have also like app generation app or data analysis, and all these use cases I said at the beginning. So if you go to our GitHub and find open computer use, yeah, we have also one sandbox that is customized just for like to have graphical interface and for the LLM to use computer. So I recommend trying that. That's like the newest thing we did. That's pretty exciting, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Teresa, and yeah, good luck with the with the E2B future.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.